All right. Welcome everybody to the November 7th, 2025 BFRW committee meeting. Having a little bit of technical challenges on the staff side, but hopefully we can get going and move forward. Dustin, can you take roll?
Yes, Annette should be able to run
Okay.
that.
Go ahead and do a roll call.
Roger Haringa,
I am here.
Todd Faberther,
Here.
Dan Young,
Here.
Angela Hupt. Angela,
Here.
Katie said she was traveling and would not be able to make it today. And then Tom Handy.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to introduce themselves? I'm not seeing any hands go up. So welcome to all of everybody from the public. Review and approve the agenda is item number 2. If we can have a motion and a second, and then we can have any discussion items.
This is Dan. Move to approve the agenda.
Thanks, Dan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Agenda item number 3 is review and approve the minutes from October 10th, which you are seeing on your screen. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes. This is Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Are there any comments, questions, edits that people have found or want to mention? Dustin, I have a question. Well, let's go ahead and approve the minutes, and then I have a question about an item.
Okay.
So all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Dustin, the question I have is the other business. Have you heard anything from Patrick about an EV charging question or concern?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well,
So that other business item he mentioned earlier in the meeting about a challenge to the California EV. I guess there's a waiver at the federal level
Okay.
that allows them to implement their program. And he shared that, and I shared it also at the MVPE committee, just as kind of heads up, but I haven't heard anything else. I ran that across Dirk's bow as well, and he's staying tuned, but there's nothing impacting us at the moment. And so I guess the suit in California might need to run its course before it makes its way this way.
Okay, thank you. Just for the info, I think for this committee, if it does come up to us again, just what's going on with it. All right. Agenda item number 4, rulemaking request, childcare centers. So if we can get, I guess, Ken Brulette is the
He's the proponent asking for this one, and I'm popping open a document right now. It's going to be PDF for us at the moment.
Okay.
Try to update the screen share here.
And this was an item that Ken brought to our attention at the last meeting. Correct. And now we are addressing it in detail.
Correct. So we came through the last time we spoke about it at this group. We asked Ken to provide some language. He did that for our council meeting in October. And then, so we have that here again today. And so the task for us here today is to most likely make a recommendation on options within this language document, and also a recommendation on whether or not we should find emergency and embark on the rulemaking process for this as immediate rulemaking, or couch it into the next code cycle.
Okay,
And so you guys should be seeing the code change proposal here. And just for reference here, black text on this is going to be the model code language. Red text is existing state amendment language. Any strike through text is proposed deletions from state or existing state amendments or the model code. Underlined text are proposed additions, and any highlights are just for emphasis.
okay, Dustin, just so I'm clear, there were 2 documents posted. There was a petition, and that's the official petition, right?
Yes, sir.
Don't really need action. That's just kind of the
A
administrative.
petition working on it.
Okay. So, Ken, does it make sense for you to walk us through this? I see you on. Is that
Yeah, I'm trying here.
okay?
Yeah, I mean, I thought my statement was relatively clear. I was just trying to figure out if, when we're looking at the Chapter 9 requirements, when it talks about occupant load, and trying to see, they use the term fire area, and it seemed to be confusing with regards to, do I need to have a fire rated separation between, and I'll use my example, the E and A occupancies for daycare. And when I look at the separated occupancy requirements in Table 508, there's no separation requirement between an E and A occupancy, which is just fine. But to determine fire areas, a fire barrier is required, and that's per Table 707.3.10 of the building code. So then it looks like, well, I got to have a 2-hour separation between the areas to determine to break up my fire areas for determining occupant load. And I don't think that was the intent of the legislation. I think the intent of the legislation was, I'm only going to look at the space where the kids are, and that's it. I'm not going to include the occupant load in the surrounding areas. And so, one, this could have just been asked for SBC to come up with some explanation of if that's the intent of this or not. But so I just thought that, okay, I'll bring this to your attention. You guys asked it, the council asked it for code language. I wasn't prepared to put together code language, but I just threw out a few different options. Unfortunately, I have not been able to run it by anybody else, so this is all on me. So if you guys don't like it, that's fine. If anybody else doesn't like it, that's fine. I have no heartburn on that whatsoever. And if people think that it's not even required and building officials have this under control, great. But I just thought that maybe we need to come up with some rulemaking to clarify regarding, is there a fire barrier required or not? Or do we have to break it up into fire areas when we look at Chapter 903 for these child care centers? And I'm hoping that's pretty much, I just recapped a paragraph of what was in my reason statement for this. So that's all I got.
I have a question or and I'm not sure, Dustin, you may be able to. I'm looking at whenever, Ken suggested we look at the intent of the legislation. I kind of like going back as we did at the single exit multiplex housing. And I'm looking and I'm trying to find what the bill created.
I will pop it open for you. I don't have the number readily handy, but I
Yeah.
can get to it real quick.
You're better at mod.
It's Senate Bill 5650.
5655.
Yeah, 5655.
565.
5655.
And some of the screens hiding behind the participants window in here.
And as I mentioned at the single exit, this is not, there may be language in here if you look at, so I often go to the bill history.
Okay.
The Senate bill report. Because sometimes there is more information in there about the intent, and maybe there isn't. I have not done that in this case, but.
Is this big enough for everybody, or I can definitely get it big? This kind of is elaborating what SBCC does.
Mhm. Can you hang on? I'm sorry, I'm slow reading maybe, but that last paragraph on that page means egress, so they're talking about egress. All right, that whole paragraph, it looks like, is egress. Updated, okay. So doesn't help me help us a whole lot. All right, I just thought that might be might help us in trying to determine the legislative intent.
Well, I think that Ken has that pretty well nailed,
Okay.
that
Okay.
if you're putting a child care center into an existing building, and I think that they're specifically looking at, church areas where they might utilize a gymnasium that's included in the building, or other areas like that. They didn't want particularly sprinkler systems to come into play just to bring in more kids. So, we've with the family home child care topic, we've heard about the child care desert that exists in Washington, and the need for more availability for folks to have this childcare available to them has been kind of painted as a dire need within the state. And so this was a aimed to get more centers available. These are going to be the commercial options, not the stuff that's installed in single family residences. And so they're just trying to make it easier for folks to get that in there and not have burdensome construction requirements as a result. And so the bill analysis that we did on this when it came through, we determined that we wouldn't require rulemaking, because the thought was that the occupant loads and requirements were kind of calculated already as is, kind of how the bill was written. But Ken's identified, the fire area as being an issue. So sprinklers still might be an issue for folks if the local jurisdictions and folks doing the regulation on this interpret that a sprinkler system is still required based on the total fire area, because it didn't say, from just this space in the gymnasium is, in an existing building. And so when we're looking at those aspects of the construction, we take a holistic approach and go from outside wall to outside wall. And, so Ken identified an issue, and I think he's not the only one. He's had some other folks reach out to him to talk about it. And so I'm not sure what, more than that is as far as the legislative intent is.
All right, well, can you bring back up the proposed language? And I guess I'm opening it up to questions or thoughts that other folks on the committee have at this point. Committee, or I'm opening up to the public as well. I think we're a relatively small group. So
I
any
I have
question?
a question for Ken. Ken, you have 3 options here. Is there one that you like more than the other options?
No, I really don't like any of the options. I just wish all the building officials, if they're all in consensus and everybody would apply this the same way, I don't think there'd be an issue. I think the option number 1, all that is just clarifying that you use the table and the table is already going to say there's not a requirement for one. So then I don't have to include the occupant load and the other occupancies in the fire area. To me, I think that would is the cleanest, but again, if somebody's already applying the code correctly, they probably don't need to do that. Yeah, I really don't have a dog in the fight right now. I'm just trying to see, again, if the Building Code Council already made a decision. They didn't think rulemaking was necessary, and everybody thinks that they're going to interpret this new RCW the same way, and there's not going to be confusion, then there's not a code change necessary. It would be nice to have maybe an opinion by the Building Code Council with regards to this. And I'm willing to hear what's with the other 14 people on the call if they just feel it's, you know, not necessary or is necessary. And if people don't think there's any confusion, great. But I personally think that there's confusion when we bring in the fire area concept for occupant load. And I'm just brought it out there. So let you guys discuss it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Ken.
And Ken or Dustin, can I be clear what the information or what you're showing is from the current Washington State Building Code? Or
I believe that was the basis for this proposal is the 2021 code. So if
Okay.
there's a need to correlate numbers or something in the 24, I'd have to double check that.
Well, part of mine is just my thought processes from an administrative perspective. Is there anything that we do or do not, if we think we need to do something, maybe we don't, but if we do, how do we deal with that in the 24 code? It's already in process, so,
So if we decide this is an emergency, it needs to be clarified now because the statute is in effect now and impacting the 2021 code. We could do emergency rulemaking for the 2021 code. And then because the 2024 codes are already kind of past the point of drafting this in there, I mean, it's not too late, but it is, approaching that point. We would pursue an expedited rulemaking process on this to make the permanent rule for 2024.
any other thoughts or questions?
This is Ardell. I don't know if I'm trying to raise my hand here. I'm in the car.
Go ahead, Ardell.
There it is. I'll lower my hand now. So I appreciate Ken bringing this forward. I think that the legislation, if there's some way that SBCC can either provide interpretation or language or concurrence with the intent, what we've got is a code change. It's not even a code change. It's a building officials calculate occupant load and include the areas of the daycare. So, but the code says that you have to calculate occupant loads based on how each space is used. And if it's got multiple uses, then it has to comply for each of those uses. So Ken's right. I mean, for the fire sprinkler application, if the fire area is defined and includes both the A and the E, then the total occupant load of the fire area should be considered. But if that's not the intent of the legislation, then that's the options that he's given here. Does that make sense? So if SBCC doesn't take a change, then we're just going to look at the full fire area, or not we, but building officials and fire marshals, the way the code is written, should be looking at the full fire area for calculating occupant load and the trigger.
Ardell, thank you very much. You articulated that much better than I did. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, it's always difficult for us to interpret what was the intent of the legislation. That's why I went back to that. We have been able to get a little bit of information from looking at the bill report, but Angela, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, because like the legislation, it doesn't say do this for the purposes of fire area or do this for the purpose of sprinklers. I mean, it's just a really broad, this is how you determine occupant load, which is exactly what you do anyway. I really would like to get more in on what the intent of the legislation is. Because I mean, currently I don't know how, I mean, I get this section is, you use the occupant load, for the whole area, which makes sense because that's how many people you're putting in there, and it's a defined fire area, and that's what we use kind of everywhere. So I'm I still it's because I don't know, is the intent that if I have an A and part of it's being used as an E, that you don't have to sprinkler it because it's only a small part of it is the E, even though you still could have a large occupant load in there all at once. Does that make any sense? I don't know. The legislation is so broad that it's like, okay, so what does it mean to do? I still am confused.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. One way we could do this is, start with the extreme case and demonstrate whether we collectively are comfortable or not comfortable with it. And to me, that's option 2. If the council were to say that, or to take action that a dedicated space within existing building is not required to provide a fire barrier, that that's I think that would make people very uncomfortable, right? Am I reading the input correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, and thank you, Jardel, because that's what to me, we need to cross that one out as a starting point. So there's option 1 and option 3, or option do nothing.
Well, can somebody define for me, when they say fire barrier, is that typically sprinklers? I mean, I need to understand, not being the fire or the architect or the building official on the committee.
A fire barrier is a type of wall.
Okay. And I go back to the findings on the RCW, the notes. The legislature finds that there is a need for more childcare services for working people. There is a public benefit when communities can use existing buildings rather than permitting new buildings to be built on open land. Churches are one type of building that often have rooms designed for education or care of children that are separate from the main sanctuary or congregational room. The legislature intends to clarify statutes so that building owners, and especially churches, are more likely to offer existing spaces for childcare services. So what we are talking about, and that's from what's listed in the RCW, that's the findings. I'm actually on the Washington State Legislature site. So I do think when we talk about intent of the way I interpret that, the intent of the legislation is there's a lot of churches. They want us to be able to make it easier for churches to be able to provide childcare. So I'll leave it at that, and there's lots of hands up. Angela, go ahead.
Well, so that's part of my issue. I mean, so if we think that the legislative intent was to address churches, then that's what we should be putting in the language. Because currently, the way it's stated, this could be a strip mall. This could be anything. It doesn't say just for churches. So, I mean, this could be a totally, a strip mall with no rated separations and things like that. And you're saying you could put, now this childcare center in where typically it would require sprinklers now, and now we're saying no, it doesn't. So again, it's one of those where they do, they say churches. When this was first brought up, I was picturing it going into a TI space, next to stores or something. So again, it's, I mean, again, if that's what it's supposed to do, then I think that if we're gonna take action, it would be an exception that would pertain to churches or similar uses versus just a blanket, any building possible. And then another question back on the language, option 1, isn't that just restating the code? Because isn't that defining a fire area anyway? And so if it's separated, it's a fire area and it would already apply. Am I confused on that?
No, that section, Angela, again, it's just applying the code. It says, hey, if I have an E and an A, there's no separation requirement. So that's what
Right.
that says. So that was just using that as an option to say, nope, there's not a separation requirement. We're good to go. But if we still use chapter 7 for fire barriers to determine fire areas, then that's where we have an issue, is still requiring a 2-hour separation.
Okay, yeah, I confused myself on which table that was. That's required, that's separations for uses. Never mind. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that if we're gonna do something, I think we should apply it again. And it appears they mean churches. Let's apply it to churches.
Hey, Todd.
Yeah, I like that, Angela. And maybe back to the process elimination. So I don't fumble it. Can someone more skilled at occupancies maybe walk through those 2 scenarios for us? Just lay out what it looks like when you have one fire area in a church and you'd have this classroom. Can you talk about the 2 occupancies and then the same juxtaposition, or it's not juxtaposition necessarily, for say a retail, like a strip mall?
So would it help if I pull up the occupancy classifications in the code language?
Yeah, I know this is kind of, well, it's kind of elementary, but it's like if someone could just put those 2 things and lay them out, describe them from especially the perspective of a building and fire official would be helpful for me, please.
Do you want me to do that, Angela, or Ken?
Oh, feel free, Ardell, please.
Okay, I'm driving back from Leavenworth, so I keep pulling into parking lots to talk. Okay, so where this is coming up for us is in churches. I'll just start with the.
And I think this is what's being envisioned. And so I've got a standalone church with spaces that could be utilized for childcare. And so to create a daycare space, and this is different than the Sunday childcare, this is like a daycare space. They also have a requirement for larger, like childcare has like outdoor area requirements, and just they have square footage requirements just for the childcare itself. So they are often using potentially like common those multi-use spaces in a church that may be their multi-purpose room for gatherings. And that's the space. So the daycare area itself may be some classrooms or some business areas. And then there is this multi-purpose room that's doing double duty. It's serving both the congregation and as a multi-purpose room, but it's also serving the daycare as play area during the daycare hours. And what the fire area concept is for sprinklers is that is an A, but it's also an E. And there's no separation requirement between an A and an E. And so, again, falling within the heightened area limits of the Chapter 5 tables. But the fire area is still bounded by horizontal assemblies or fire barriers or fire walls. So the compartment itself is the whole building. And you have to look at the whole building for the sprinkler requirements, the entire fire area. Where that then, so if you look at this language and say, well, the building official is going to calculate the occupant load based on the use of the of the daycare areas only. That conflicts with the building code that says you have to calculate the occupant load based on all of the uses. So if I have a configuration where it's being used as a daycare and it's not separated from my assembly use, I look at occupant load with all the spaces fully occupied for their designated occupancies. And that is the area, the total occupant load that I am assigning to my fire area and then checking my fire sprinkler triggers. Does that explain it, Todd?
Yeah, that does it a lot better than I could have. Thank you.
Do you still need to hear the strip mall version of that?
Please.
I'd be curious if everyone else is.
So on this, in the strip mall, which I happen to be sitting in right now, if there is a space that is one tenant space opens up as a daycare, but my actual fire area includes multiple tenant spaces because I don't have a fire barrier until, 3 or 4 tenant spaces down. I'm once again looking at my fire area as whatever is bounded by my compartmentalization. So it's the fire barrier limits. If it's 2-story, it doesn't have a horizontal assembly. Whatever's in that fire area is the occupant load that I'm evaluating for the purpose of sprinkler triggers. If there is no separation between this tenant and the adjacent tenant, that is what we're talking about. Is the intent to still follow the code and include all the occupant load within the fire area? Or is it I'm not including those other people within the fire area, and I'm only looking at the E for the sprinkler trigger?
Yep.
So it's a basic tenet of calculating occupant load within the fire area for the purpose of the sprinkler trigger. And does the issued legislation change that?
Does that answer your question, Todd?
Yeah, I think I was just trying to make a distinction that is there a different occupancy in the retail, obviously, that would that doesn't exist when you have an A&E occupancies, right?
Yeah, you could. Retail could have, you could have an M or a B or
That's what I was maybe getting at is to me that seems obvious there should be a fire separation.
Only if you're looking, so you can have non-separated occupancies within a fire area.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it works for the non-separated occupancy, and that's a separate calculation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, I keep going back to what my thinking of the intent is, and that is that it seems like when they were talking mostly about churches during their discussion, they were talking about putting a daycare in a church space as an alternate use when the church maybe wasn't in session. And so you were just trading people for people, on a part-time basis. And so in that case, you're not really raising the occupant load. You're just kind of changing its use, from one thing to another, in between uses. In a strip mall where you've got kind of full-time tenants perhaps on either side with an occupant load that, can be randomly the same at all times during the daycare operation, then that seems to me like it would be a different situation. And if the classifications were such that you'd need fire separation anyway, then there probably should be some. But I'm just wondering if that is in the case or the intent where it's kind of like trading occupants for occupants during other times when the primary occupancy isn't even there, like in a church. That I don't know. maybe there's some way we can make that type of a distinction as far as how the fire areas are treated.
Thanks, Tom. Angela?
Yeah, that's kind of what Tom was talking about, is kind of what I was going to bring up, is in the church scenario, they're not, it's going to be the kids are there or the church is there. In the mall, it can be a fully occupied building all at the same time. So I think that's where there is a difference also in how it should be applied.
Okay. Dan?
I was just getting ready to lower my hand because that's what I was going to say is what Angela said. I think there is a distinct difference between a strip mall and a church, because obviously the table that we're seeing shows that in a strip mall, you're most likely going to have a B or an M next to it, and the fire barrier is required. So I think there has to be a distinction between a church and a strip mall.
Okay. I also have a comment as people have talked, getting away from what the code says and what the code doesn't say, and thinking about what, in my opinion, makes sense. In the mall application, if you have a bunch of tenant spaces and you have a new TI that's going to come in and put in a daycare center, if that that daycare center, I think, requires a sprinkler, but if there is not a sprinkler or a fire separation, and I'm going to come in and put a daycare center, and it somehow changes the separation and or sprinkler for the tenant space next door, the answer is going to be, you're going to need to deal with it on that, in just that TI tenant space, which means you're going to have to put in a fire barrier. That's probably the solution, is you just need to do a fire barrier. Otherwise you're having to go back and impact a tenant space that's next door. So the way I am thinking is, particularly with the findings and the intent, they're talking about churches in the RCW, that we as a committee suggest that we address churches and churches specifically, and recognize that we are talking about churches where it is daycare, not during church services or something. And again, I'm not sure the best way to say that, but so just on from a general perspective, I'm thinking that we should address it specifically to churches, because that is really the intent of the legislation, and clarify that for churches. If doing nothing handles the case where for the strip mall, then let's do nothing with that. But I do think we would need to be more restrictive in that case, because you're really are impacting a tenant next door, whereas the church, I'm making an assumption here, but the church is going to have control over their space, and they are working in some fashion with the tenant who wants to do a daycare center in their church. So couple of general thoughts. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to understand this. I get a little nervous about calling out specifically churches as like a building typology, or calling it a special occupancy, unless someone can kind of share with us where there's precedent that's the case. I think the notion that it's an either or application of an occupancy in that building typology is valid, and I wish there was a way we could say that more directly than saying a church. And then back to what I was trying to unpack, and thank you, Ardell, on the like say the retail example, was process elimination. I don't know that I'm hearing anyone's comfortable with let's call it a relief or anything from in a non-separated space, that you would just waive the requirements for the requirements for the higher occupancy type that's in that shared space. And I'm not hearing that anyone is comfortable removing then, or the fire barrier piece to offer that separation. So just want to put that out there, say that one more time, make sure that's a true statement with everyone. And then back to that building type, is someone have a more clever way to do that? Not saying that's not clever. Roger, I get the concept. I'm trying to think of a better way to say, how do we say when it's you flipping the occupancy type. That's why there's a difference.
Angela, go ahead.
I think it's necessary and it's completely unenforceable to say, as long as this daycare is going in a church and you know, promise to not, use the church at the same time as the daycare is using it. I just think that it's kind of an inherent, because of what a church is. I do think that it should be indicated as a standalone structure or a separated structure, because again, churches go into strip malls or churches are part of, warehouses, or so those just sort of slip into any area. But I think somehow if it's a standalone sort of church, or again, it has currently separations and things, then it would be able to do it. But yeah, I just think based on, the way churches are used and the crossover of spaces anyway, I think it would be kind of a trade out. So yeah.
I will, and I don't know if this helps or complicates your comment, Angela, but in the RCW, it does say care of children that are separate from the main sanctuary or congregational room. So that's in the findings part. I don't know if it's in the bill that you have up there, but so again, the intent is it's not part of it is separate from the main sanctuary and congregational room. So again, I'm not sure if that
it's gonna be the Sunday school rooms is usually, or the rooms that they already use for childcare during church services. I mean, that's what it is. It's not that they're gonna be throwing 50 kids into the sanctuary as a daycare, so I mean, it's still an area of the church that's taken into account with the building, and it's now just being used for official childcare versus, say, childcare during services or something. So it's still kind of a trade out, no matter what.
Okay. Todd?
Without sounding critical of the way this policy is written, it does say that the legislature intends to classify statutes so that building owners, and especially churches, so it's kind of strange to me that in statute they would give examples or kind of go into kind of the narrative of that. But I mean, I think it has to be more than just churches, the way I read that last sentence of that section 1. I mean, to me, it is because also we're describing community centers, right? They were describing Legion clubs, things like that in my hometowns.
Certainly think the last sentence implies that, although they also pretty specifically call out churches. And I think the findings and intent, Todd, while I think it can help us with direction, I don't know that it is that we are held to that. I think if we determine the intent was around churches, and we are only comfortable dealing with churches and write something to that effect, I think that I hope that would be helpful and help clarify for the building officials. So Tom?
Yeah, sorry, I've been trying to come up with another way of saying it too. I agree with Todd. It's probably a good idea to to have it mentioned where it's a little bit more broad than just churches, because it could be, you know, other spaces too. Somehow it's a part-time use of a space that's otherwise unoccupied. And maybe there's a way to write that or quantify that better.
I go back and I'm thinking we can be more restrictive. It's like if we open it up to more, if we are trying to address this for all cases of childcare centers in any of these scenarios that we've talked about, I think we need to be more conservative and or restrictive. You know, we can't, which is kind of, I'm wondering why would anybody have a problem with Ken's option 3? Dedicated space used as a childcare center within an existing building is required to provide a fire barrier to determine the occupant load of the fire area. Does that describe for me what that would be? That's going to be pretty restrictive for what I think of as a regular church building where they've got classrooms. Are they now going to have to create a fire barrier where that daycare center is?
Well, in a church, the AE doesn't require that separation between them. But I mean, I think they're also trying to not calculate egress requirements based on the entire church area as well. So I'm not sure, but I kind of am attracted to option 3.
Okay. Angela?
Yeah, so option 3 is basically saying that either you have your rated walls that separate the childcare area from the rest of the church, or you count the occupant load of the entire church. That's what option 3 is saying. So, I mean, option 3 is basically saying the code is again, because I mean, it's saying that either you separate off the child stuff with a fire barrier, which in an existing church, you're not going to be able to do. And then, or you use the whole church. So again, that's kind of, am I wrong that it's just saying what the code says? It's just clarifying it, I guess.
No, this is Ken. Angela, I agree. It's just clarifying if you just read the code correctly, you are correct. It's just applying 707.3.10 for fire areas.
Yeah, so option 3 isn't giving any relief to a church or something to make it easier. It's basically just reiterating what the code currently requires is based on the defined fire area, you use the occupant load in that area total to determine if it's over 51 with that E in it. Even if the occupant load of the E is 15, it's gonna require sprinklers.
I mean, that was kind of the interpretation we took when this legislation was coming down, was that it's not going to change the status quo for how we were doing our calculations on occupant load factors and stuff. So, I mean, the clarification's there, and I think it's in alignment with the way we were looking at it when this legislation was being passed, and hopefully clarifies it for folks down the road. But I mean, I'm also, when I was scrolling through the A occupancy there, there's the educational rooms accessory to religious spaces. That says that those spaces that don't have an occupant load of more than 100 are not considered separated occupancies. And so I was curious if that plays a factor for anybody in this discussion.
No, because it still means that the entire building is the fire area.
Yeah, I agree.
If it was required to be separated, separated, so it was already had a 1 hour wall or whatever separating the E or the education rooms from the rest, then we wouldn't need this discussion because they would be already their own fire area. But because there isn't a separation required, now it's all one big fire area.
Right. I mean, we're still calculating the whole fire area, and I guess that's the crux of the matter is the fire area is larger than these spaces that they're trying to dedicate some relief to.
Yeah, so I guess if we're just trying to clarify that we want to stay with status quo, that we think everything should be counted in that fire area, which I do not have a problem with. And again, it would just be so that we're creating some consistency, then I would say option 3 would provide just in case, because I think, yeah, what Ken's trying to get around is that developers are going to be like, no, the legislation says you can, it's just for this. So my E is in this larger area, but it in itself is all you can look at. So I think option 3 would help to clarify that.
My only concern with option 3 is I believe the intent of the legislature. The first sentence they talk about is the legislature finds that there is a need for more childcare services for working people. So they are wanting, I take that as they are wanting some relief, as you mentioned, you term it, Angela. And I just am not sure. So if we are talking about a situation where right now you calculate the fire area and you don't need sprinklers, but now you put in a childcare center, you have to use the occupant load of the childcare center, and that kicks you over so that the full fire area, now you need to sprinkle everything. Is that the challenge that we have, Ardell? You could probably answer that.
Yeah, I think we have an existing non-conforming to current code for the purpose of sprinklers. So you've got a church with an assembly area that is non-sprinkled, and they want to change a portion of the building to an E occupancy.
Okay.
And if you don't, so maybe this belongs in the existing building code as relief and not necessarily in the chapter 9, but that's a separate idea. But yeah, it's that scenario where you've got an existing non-conforming sprinkler building, which would be okay to continue as a non-sprinkled, and adding the E creates and extends a nonconformity. So that's one scenario. The other is a building that didn't need the sprinklers, which is what you're suggesting. And I'd have to think further on it. It would be a small A that would be okay without sprinklers. And then adding the E does trigger sprinklers.
Well, Ardell, I kind of like your comment about placing the relief in the existing building code. You do talk about there's a public benefit when communities can use existing buildings rather than permitting new buildings to be built on open land. So I believe the intent is, how can we go into existing buildings? So if we can drill down on relief in the existing building code rather than the building code, which is a new building, a new structure, maybe that's a path forward where we can try to provide some relief for what the legislature is trying to do. But in the case that I just spelled out, as it's a conforming or a new building, and I don't know, I know that the option 3 is the it clarifies for people, but I don't think that it addresses trying to make childcare easier to put into existing buildings, so. Ardell, your hand is still up. Are you more questions
Nope,
or
that's a
comments?
mistake. Sorry.
Okay, Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, so I like the existing building code sort of thing because, I mean, again, if you're talking about a new building, then adding a rated wall or doing something isn't a huge issue, and sprinklers would probably be required anyway at construction. So for most things that you'd be talking about. So, I mean, yeah, I would be interested in looking instead at the existing building code.
So Dustin, you've got the IEBC up there, is that?
Correct. And I was looking at chapter 10 here for change of occupancy. I'm not sure if that's the most appropriate space here. Because they're talking like, I was reading this about this chapter section in the for instance group A3 and my highlight features. I'm not signed in on the premium codes at the moment. Deals with a variant, for example, if you had a bowling alley to a dance hall, the occupancy classification remains in A3, but the different uses could lead to drastically different code requirements. And so I think, and we're talking about changing from in A type occupancy and bringing in an E type occupancy. So I'm not sure that chapter 10 is necessarily the appropriate spot yet. And I'm not the most proficient with the existing building code as well. I didn't dabble there much when I was building official.
I'm trying to get into the IEBC as well.
Ardell or Angela, do you guys feel that chapter 10 might be the appropriate location within the IEBC to target looking at? Or is there a different spot in here?
I need to look again. I don't dabble in the IABC often, so I'd have to take a look at whether the change in occupancy or change in use section would be the appropriate. So not sure right now.
Okay.
There's different compliance methods in the existing building code. And so for the work area method, Dustin, yes, that is the appropriate. So chapter 10 is change of occupancy. Fire protection is under section 1004. And that just says go comply with the building code. So if there was an exception to that you wanted to write in like this, that would be the appropriate location in section 1004.1. For the work area, pardon me, that's the work area method. For the prescriptive compliance method, it would be under section 506, change of occupancy.
I see a 506.6 which is enhanced classroom acoustics. That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
506.7 maybe being, or what maybe it is both. If there are two methods of compliance, we would need to address a 506.7 and a something in chapter 10.
So the alternative, and this is not something that's as common yet, but the model code is moving towards this, is that provisions for all compliance methods is under chapter 3. And this is where the code sort of bundles, no matter which compliance method you're in. this is the break that you get or the relief that you get. So, for example, accessibility applies no matter what the compliance method you're choosing for the existing building code. And that's, that would be sort of the analogous location. So you have options. You would have to either put it into every compliance method, and I've shown you the two. There's a third one that people don't typically use. We could work on the language for that. Or you put it into chapter 3, and then it applies to all compliance methods.
Todd, go ahead.
Just as we're talking through this, so what I think I'm hearing is we're leaning towards new construction, add clarity to Ken's question, either through opinion or potentially amendment if needed, that on new construction enforce the building code as is. But potentially there is an opportunity for relief on existing, and that's why we would explore amending the existing. Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because Ken's question is really just add clarity to the building code. We're kind of taking it another step here now to add more compliance, perhaps, to we're trying to conform more to the statute. So 2 actions, in my opinion.
That aligns with what I'm thinking and what it sounds like we're moving towards.
So can I just say one more thing, Todd? That's, you could leave it in the existing building in the IBC and not touch the IEBC. That is a choice. But if you want to make it apply only to existing buildings in the IBC, then you would need to state, for existing buildings, do this, or this is allowed, right?
And you feel there's good precedent for that?
I would almost comment, Todd, that it's not good precedent. There might be precedent. But if we're talking about existing buildings.
Or it would be more clear. Maybe that's a way to ask. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
Roger.
I just think if we're talking about existing buildings, it should be in the IEBC, but Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, I like the 2 actions. Because I think for new construction, they should meet the current situation, because I mean, that's not, the legislation is saying for existing buildings, they don't want people to have to build new buildings and do stuff. So I think for the IBC, again, I think that clarification of option 3, I like that. And then again, for the existing buildings, do the IABC, and then that's where there can be a sort of a different kind of thing for specific situations, but so that things can be fit into an existing building. So I like that. I don't want to put in the IBC for existing buildings, you can do this, because again, that stuff's been taken out for the most part and put in a separate code.
So if we break down the 2 actions, Ardell, go ahead.
Sorry, Todd asked if there is precedence, and I apologize because I threw this idea out there without fully thinking it through. 90326 is a fire sprinkler section in the Washington State Building Code that is further amended. Item 3. I suggested this conceptually because the existing building code is where these things belong. But I think Washington State does have precedence of doing this for sprinklers in the IBC. Addressing existing buildings in the IBC. Sorry.
No, that helps. you know, and maybe long-term, we would just get it in both and try to make them align. Yeah.
I guess I would ask the building officials. Would it be preferred to be in the IBC or preferred to be in the IEBC? If we're gonna give some latitude or going into existing buildings. I see that there is precedence. But just what is preferred? So Ardell, your hand is still up.
Sorry, I gotta
That's
lower it.
fine. Be careful if you're driving, Tom.
I'm home, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just
I
looking.
wondered, Ardell, how you got exactly to a 903.261, but Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking in the existing building code, there's section 303.1 that talks about occupancy is special to storm shelters in existing buildings. You know, perhaps a section for daycares similar to that could be developed.
Okay. Micah.
Thanks,
Please
Paul.
go ahead.
I also like the existing building location, especially since the legislation talks about existing structures and existing spaces. So I think that may be more appropriate, even if we do have some type of information in the building code at some point. I think just based on the legislation that the existing building code was a great suggestion, Ardell. Thanks.
Okay, so I was gonna say, Todd talked about two separate actions. One being an opinion on the building code.
An opinion or actually an amendment I'm sorry to just jump in, an opinion or amendment per Ken's question, whatever the council and stakeholders best.
And Todd, where I was going was, if we could offer an opinion now, that's an easy one where the BFRW says that we believe this is the right interpretation of the current code of the IBC, and try to get that clarification into the 2024 code through emergent, and I'm assuming that that's emergency rulemaking.
It's not necessarily.
What's that? Go ahead.
It's not necessarily emergency rulemaking for the 2024 code. That is a path we could take, but that is the one that, requires we, get 2/3 vote to determine that emergent situation, and then we vote on the language. It's not too late to try to draft something into the 2024 code. It's quickly approaching a point where after January, we're planning on filing our CR 102s by February 18th. Council, I'm planning to have hopefully make a blessing on that filing at the January 15th council meeting. And so there's a little bit of time that we could get this drafted in for CR 102 for the 2024 codes in the normal rulemaking process.
Okay. I would love for us to follow that path of opinion on the current, and I think we may need to have a formal request for an opinion from a building official. So that could be Ardell, it could be
I
Angela.
don't think that we need to.
I can
we
do
don't
that.
have to hold the train to get that request. If it's we're talking about it now, we could issue the opinion in response to the petition from Ken. That could be the alternate method there. We don't have to get the request to start that process.
Okay. And my temptation is to, I guess I'm curious from Robert's Rules of Order, do we need to have a motion and pass the direction that we're going to take as a BFRW committee? Or can we just start taking actions? I like the idea of offering an opinion for the 2021 code, try to get that clarification on the IBC in the 2024 code. And get language that we can address at I think we have a BFRW meeting scheduled for early December. Get the IEBC resolved. So if somebody could come up with suggested language, whether it's in chapter 3 or 10 or whatever the other one was. What do we think the best way is in the IEBC? And we confirm that and vote and approve that at the December BFRW committee. Those 3 actions make sense to me, but Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're going through this in real time here. I agree with you, Roger. I think we also could probably navigate this as this was sent back to the BFRW to give an opinion, and our action today could simply be to direct staff to develop an opinion for the council to adopt in the next couple of weeks. It might not even have to come back here if we don't need to. I think we've been pretty thorough here. And then the other one's a different process. And that's why I was separating that out. That would be more like we're doing an emergency rule to for alignment with a current state statute. Is that correct?
I think so, although you're saying the other one, and I keep thinking that there are 3 actions.
Yeah. Oh, the other one meaning the existing building. If we're going to try to get this into 2024, I don't think we're trying to amend the 2021, are we? I mean, we could, but
No, what I thought, Todd, is we are going to offer an opinion on the 2021 code. So if the question comes up next week or
yeah,
after the opinion comes up, the SBCC has an opinion and that we've provided clarity on the interpretation of the code.
right. And that's the first one. And that's what I'm suggesting. If we want to make that recommendation to staff or direct staff to do that today, that could come in front of the full council in a couple of weeks.
So that's item number 1. I would love to have a motion to direct the staff to offer an opinion, to draft an opinion addressing the 2021 IBC. That, and I'm going to stretch my my motion I'm requesting, but basically reflects option 3. So clarifying the code, but do it as an opinion that clarifies it. Could I get a motion for that? And what, Todd?
No, that's sufficient. I think that's sufficient. I think we can just simply say capture this conversation as documented. But I agree that captures it. So moved.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Do I have a
Second.
second? Thank you, Angela. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that's action number 1. Now, dealing with getting this clarification into the 2024 IBC, I want to be cognizant of the ability of the BFR, Todd, maybe, and or Dustin, if you can help me out. Does the BFRW have the power to how do we get that into the rulemaking? Do we have to go down to the tags? Or I want to make sure that we are doing the proper, it needs to be open for public, which I guess that's the CR 102, right? We're putting this up to the public. Go ahead, Todd.
Well, Dustin, you can help me out here. This is already an emergency petition, right? We have not determined that whether or not emergency basis exists from the full council. So that's the first step, is to take it to the council, establish an emergency basis based on that option, that number 2 that we have been discussing recently, alignment with state.
So to engage in the emergency rulemaking, we would need to establish emergency basis to get this into the CR 102 for the 2024 codes. We wouldn't need to do that. I don't think it would hurt us to establish that as a reasoning why we're inserting this language into the CR 102 without having a proposal or pushing it down to the tag and running it back up. So I think an emergency, like a response to this petition, could be to deny the petition And then, you know, we're gonna pursue this in the 2024 rulemaking process, but you know, this is new. I haven't had a chance to fully think about all of this as the process moving forward goes.
Ken, go ahead.
Hey, I'm more than willing to pull the petition so then you don't have to bring it to council to decide if it's an emergency or not, if that's helpful. And
I
just, you
mean,
don't have to act on it.
we can, I mean, that relieves us from response to the petition. That does give the SBCC some relief on that. And I just thinking about inserting this language into the CR 102 without, you know, the tag process is the pivot point I'm on right now. I You know, we will get public comments, you know, or there's potential for public comments through the public comment period after we file CR 102. You know, I think maybe before we insert that in there, it'd be good to get a council motion to do that. And maybe at the next BFRW, solidify the language a little bit more. And, you know, it'll be on people's radars to maybe come and speak a little bit more as well. I don't think they were expecting us to drop this into CR 102 as a result of this meeting today. So there's sure some interested parties that would like to opine on the topic.
I'm just clarifying the process here. So it was talked about at the SBCC. It was introduced. All right. Then at the next meeting, is the SBC responsible then to declare if it's an emergency or not?
Yes.
Okay. So then my question back to you is it easier for the SBCC and this committee, since you've already made a motion to move forward with some rulemaking, to pull the petition so then you guys don't even have to bring it up on the agenda to declare an emergency rule? That doesn't have to be discussed.
I would say yes.
Yes. May I jump
Okay.
into? Yes, it would be, Ken. And
Okay.
the question really, there's two questions. One is, and what we've directed so far is to move into an opinion on the 2021. Is that sufficient for everyone as for an immediate action? And then knowing that we're going to find a pathway to try to introduce this petition for the 2024 IEBC. And then my suggestion is either right now, if we have the ability as the committee to just recommend it to the IEBC tag. I don't know that we have to go to the full council, but if we have to, that's fine too, to direct it back down to the IEBCC. I think that would be the best pathway to take it to the tag.
So then I will go ahead and pull it, and I'll just put that in as an email to you, Dustin.
Okay.
Pull the petition, and I mean, this basically just got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And there's no
And then
reason to go. That's fine.
We'll
with me.
still use your petition as justification for why we moved it.
No, it don't exist anymore after I pull it, right?
No, I know.
Don't be pulling up and sticking my name all over the place again.
So
Get more phone calls and emails.
Todd and Dustin, to avoid any concern of the public that we are not following the right process, is it easier for us to just say there is an emergency? And now we have to make the change to both the 2024 IBC and the 2024 IEBC.
I think Dustin's right. If there's a pathway to just introduce it,
Okay.
because it's been flagged now, we've talked about it, you know, at length.
Yeah.
And if anyone challenges it, then yeah, sure, we can look at it if we really need to go down that pathway. But I think that there's strong consensus that.
Well, and I will say the IEBC is still, or the IBC tag is still active currently.
Correct.
Yeah, we can take this on for sure.
Considering other things,
And I think this committee is also empowered to direct this down to the tag without having to go to the council first.
I think so too.
yeah, okay. So do we have to have a motion? So then, Todd, I'm asking, the motion for the next task is to take this topic to the IBC and come up with language to be included in the 2024 IBC for clarity and 2024 IEBC for the relief we're talking about.
Well, maybe not the 2021, and I'll make that motion. I move that this committee directs 2024, development of 2024 rulemaking to amend directed 2024 amendment to the IEBC tag. Sorry, that was sloppy.
That's a motion. Do I have a second?
This is Dan. I think I'll second that one. I think I understood what Todd said, so.
All right.
Basically,
Makes
we're,
one of us.
yeah,
I
we're
have
saying
some-
send it to the 2024 IEBC.
Right. Tag.
Yes,
Yep.
I second that.
Okay, so I am in support of that. This is other comments or questions. I'm in support of that. My question to everybody is the 2024 IBC. Does anything have to happen to that? We've offered an opinion on the 2021, right? Or we're going to offer an opinion on the 2021 IBC. I'm assuming then that opinion will, if the language doesn't change in the 2024 IBC, that opinion would go forward. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. And I'll add, let's let the tag chew on it and make a recommendation if there should be further amendment potentially to the IBC.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Ken, for bringing that up. I believe, getting back to the agenda, that is agenda item number 4.
I just want to say you're welcome, and I also just gave Dustin an email to pull the petition, so
Okay,
that should be done.
Thank you, Ken.
thanks, Ken. So item number 5, opinion request. I-10
Yes.
occupancies above horizontal assembly 2021 IDC section 510-2.
All right, let me go back and I'll pull open the draft request so on this one, we got the request, and there's this PDF I have on here that was got a lot of language in there kind of explaining the problem that they are trying to address. And so looking at the rulemaking on the sections involved here, it's 510.2. I went back looking at the rulemaking for the 2021 code. There is a proposal that makes a modification to 510.2, but the content of that proposal doesn't, it shows the change in relation to the model code, not necessarily to the WAC language. And so during the drafting of our 2021 codes, the 510.2 was kind of washed and the new amendment was brought in, but the old amendment content was not retained. And so in my draft response for this one, I'm got in here that the method that they want to employ for addressing this without a language change is appropriate, where they're using 5043 and 5044, which talk about height and number of stories. And that is, they're applying the values from those tables regardless of the location of a horizontal separation there. And but it's my opinion that we have an error in the code resulting from the 2021 process, and there's some elements there that got removed. And so I'll pause there, and the proponent of, or the requester of this opinion did not or is not available for this meeting. I did include Micah in the communication I had with them on the draft, and Micah had his name on the proposal that's linked here. But Micah, I'll turn over if you have some more comments on it.
Go ahead, Micah.
Thanks. And Dustin, I have replied to your email this morning. I apologize. I was at the WABO meeting
All right.
for that, so I didn't get to you on Wednesday. I'm gonna throw out there that I am not seeing the issue, and I don't agree with the opinion at this point. When I look back at my proposal, or our proposal for 510.2, number 5, it was a clarification proposal that allows, if you want to pull that proposal up, it's group I2 was not included in that 5.10.2 allowance above a horizontal separation in the model code. It's not included in the WAC rule either. If you see item 5 there, where you're striking through that language, that was just an early adopter of the clarification for the 2024 IBC language. If you go back to the 2018 language as well, the I2 or I conditions were not included in that list of allowances above that horizontal separation or horizontal assembly. So I don't see it as an error. I'm not sure, I know they're trying to do something, but that's outside, what is allowed on over the horizontal separation. To my understanding, Angela's got her hand up. Maybe she can add to that, but the change that you're showing didn't remove or didn't omit an I occupancy. This was the model code language. It was a model code change for 2024 that we thought was beneficial for the state. In other words, it pretty much says you're permitted to have a group A. It doesn't say you have to have multiple group A's or multiple group B's above that horizontal separation. It says you can have them, and it didn't put the occupancy limit there. So again, that's all we did with that proposal. And the request for the I condition 2 above the horizontal separation is outside the scope of what we changed or modified. And it's outside what is allowed by the current 2024 language as well. So that amendment is just aligning with that. Angela, go for it.
So actually, so this took me a while because Crystal Koki is the one that submitted this, and she talked to me about it yesterday. And so this took me a while to chase down the rabbit holes and stuff, but the WAC actually did. The 2018 WAC for this section did include I1 condition 2s in it. Our Washington custom code that we did was wrong, because I went and I was like, well, where is this coming from? And I pulled up the Washington custom code for this section, and it didn't have that in there. It didn't have the I1 condition 2. And I was like, okay, so that's where I was confused. And I was like, what is she talking about? But then I went to the archived WAC that was in effect in 2020. I pulled up those archived, and it does have the I1 condition 2 in that section. And so that's what I think happened was, for some reason, that WAC was, so I used, the 2021. And it was an error on the publishing. And so, yeah, it's 510 or 5 whatever. Yeah. So it's right in, where is it? It's number 4. See, it says that's the actual WAC. Go down, yeah, right there. And it says B Group I Condition 2 licensed care facilities. So it was actually there. That it must have been a state amendment. But again, it just was published in the actual custom code incorrectly. Micah?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go a little further down the rabbit hole. I think this is one state published in error, and it was an errata from IBC or ICC, and this was not correct. So again, I'm going to have to go further down the rabbit hole than you did, but I think that this was one that was incorrect through an errata from ICC, and it was published in the WAC and then was supposed to be pulled back and was not done by Stoyan. But I'm going to have to go further down the rabbit hole, Angela, to be honest with you, because it's not showing. I don't think it showed as a state amendment. We'd have to go back and maybe search further, but I could be wrong. You might have found the right thing, but
yeah, that's what I was going off of, and I think that's what the requester was going off of too. And this is one more reason why having the WACs having something where it shows the strike throughs and underlines, so we know who made the which group made the change, would be so nice. But yeah. So yeah, it is, yeah, so.
And so my characterization that there's an error in the filing was based on that I found this in the WAC and in the online publication, and looking at the changes shown for that proposal, it doesn't show this language in there. And so anyway, it appeared to me in my research that this a portion of this section wasn't carried forward, and if there's history that there's supposed to be some amendments, I haven't come across that yet, and I'd be happy to clean this up if we can identify what needs to be there.
And it is showing it on the online version. So I have a PDF version of the 2018 Washington State Building Code, and it's not in there. So it's one of those where not sure which direction if the error went, if I have a more recent or if this is. So yeah, we'll have to figure out where the I-1 condition 2, who made the error. Because the red is
The state
ICC.
amendment.
Is an ICC change or a Washington change?
Red is a Washington change.
Okay.
So Dustin, if that's the case, there should be a proposal for this to go into the 2018 because it was not in the 2015 Washington state language. So again, that's where I think this was a some type of error somewhere, and I'm not sure it was supposed to be allowed in the first place. Again, it's unfortunate, but Angela found stuff, I found stuff. It sounds like we need to do more research and probably shouldn't vote the opinion forward yet until that's clarified. Because again, that language is only found in the 2018 and the proposal, and I guess I'm just going to speak to the proposal we submitted. I didn't change any of that. I went with the model code and that changed for the clarification. So hopefully we can figure it out. Thanks.
Thanks, Micah. Todd?
So as we unpack the history of this, can someone speak to the technical merits of for and against this in the 510.2 section?
You asked for somebody to speak to the technical merits?
Yeah, I can just so we can document, why someone would have proposed the I-1 condition 2.
I'd have to go back and do more research on it, Todd, because again, it's outside the norm, and it was just for one code cycle in Washington that I'm seeing. And I'd have to go find the proposal and go back to it, and it's been a while. So
Maybe
I wouldn't be able to speak to it at this point without further research.
Okay.
And Angela did more than I did and talked to Crystal yesterday. I know Crystal kind of eyeballed me yesterday when I was she's at the WABO thing too. All of us were, but I didn't get a chance to talk to her about it. So
thank you for that. Maybe asking differently, is someone asking for it now? Or are we simply trying to correct errors?
So that's Crystal has a project that is coming up that would like to utilize this. It's an assisted living or something. And so she basically wants us to determine, was it omitted in error, is kind of what it is. And Micah is saying, no, other things, we need to go back and find out where the error was actually made. If the error was putting it in the first place, or if the error was removing it. And I don't know that we have actually determined that yet, unless Dustin, did you go back and find the original proposal to the 18 code?
No, I have. That's a note for me to do after this meeting here today.
So I think before we move forward with saying, yes, this is the right, opinion or not, we need to track that down.
So on the content of 510.2, I agree that we're not really primed to answer question 1, but question 2 is really based on what is codified right now. Does anybody have any input on the way Crystal's looking to apply 510 or I guess not apply 510.2, but use the tables 5043 and 5044 in establishing the height and story limits on her project? Or should we just couch this whole opinion until we can suss out the origins of 5.10.2.
I'd like to,
Go ahead.
Committee.
Angela.
sorry, I was like, I'd kind of like to see it, maybe the whole thing tabled. Maybe. I don't
And I'm
know.
okay with that. I was just, if Crystal had something coming up soon, you know, and she wanted to use the answer to question 2, maybe just the conversation today could help guide her. I think she's got the power to take that interpretation and apply it to her project. But if we want to figure out 5.10.2 first, I'm okay with that as well.
Todd?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the merits, but I think we can't give an opinion until we know what's in and what if it's in or out of the code or supposed to be there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Do we, if we're going to table it, do we want to potentially try to bring it to the council meeting upcoming? That'll get an answer sooner than tabling it to the next BFRW.
I think that would make sense if we think, Todd and Dustin, I don't know what's on our agenda. Is it a meeting that's gonna be packed full?
It's not going to be packed full, but I'll have to do all this research here real quick. And then we got holiday next week. So we're trying to get all that developed by Monday so that we don't lose days for posting the council meeting next week.
Okay. I'm gonna suggest that, so we probably need to have a motion, and I'm gonna say that we postpone and attempt to have it at the council meeting. If it doesn't happen at the council meeting, then we can put it on our agenda for our December meeting to resolve it. But hopefully we can get the research done and have an opinion we can discuss at the council meeting.
Okay. So I think the motion you're looking for is that the committee, I move to that the committee directs this to the full council after staff research and recommendation.
Second.
Thanks, Angela, for a second. Is there any other discussion items? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Item number 6 on our agenda is other business, and I have one item of other business that I'm just going to get out there. It can be in the minutes. I can hopefully have a little bit more information pulled together for our next meeting. And I think that this is the right group for us to address this issue, but I believe that there was a code change proposal that adopted, let me see if I can get my notes, adopted the ASCE 722 supplements, supplement 2. And that ASCE 722 supplement 2 addresses flood loading and the flood maps. And I am concerned that the ASCE 722 refers to ASCE 2424, which modify the 100-year elevation for flood loading.
Don't they take it to the 500-year?
All right. I am not sure, Dustin. I got an email a while back, and when I concluded after doing some research, and I apologize that I've not, this was 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. I was concerned that by us adopting ASCE 7, the supplement 2, that we were going to be making a change in the 2024 code that would significantly increase the number of houses that are subject to the flood loading. And we are adopting it prior to the normal IBC ASCE 7, ASC IBC framework. I think we need to have some discussion about that. I think that the IBC tag did that without really understanding the implication that it would have. When the IBC tag said, yes, let's accept that. So Dustin, again, I just want to get it out there as a potential issue. I will try to work maybe with Dustin to kind of confirm exactly the details of it. And we can talk about it, get it submitted to everybody on this tag, and we can talk about it at the December meeting.
I have a little bit more information that it'll probably be relevant for this one.
Okay.
The state floodplain manager made a reach out to me to ask about what ASCE documents are specifically adopted currently right now. I let them know that, you know, the 2021 has its, you know, documents, and we're in the process of doing the 2024. And they expressed interest in trying to align the building code requirements with the state model floodplain ordinance, which isn't necessarily, you know, for the most part, the floodplain ordinance aligns with the building code provisions. But the local jurisdictions have to adopt their local floodplain ordinance to stay in compliance with the NFIP. And if there's discrepancies there and they adopt a model floodplain ordinance that's not in alignment with the building code, it just creates some conflict there. And so they, I think, are interested in engaging with us, not necessarily in the 2024 process because it's a little late on that ball game, but in the future to align that model floodplain ordinance with building code requirements. And so we can invite them to these conversations if we want to embark on them.
Okay, that's fine. My only question and the reason that I think it needs to be done sooner rather than later is I believe that there is a CR 102 to adopt the supplement to. If that goes through, I believe that we as a state building code council may have approved something ahead of time prior to the whole ICC process that has may have a significant cost impact on homes where homes are in the floodplain. So, and I'm not positive that that's the case, but if that is the case, I want to be able to make sure that we're aware of it. And would it make sense for the council to withdraw that one proposal to accept supplement 2 prior to it going to CR 102? That's my, you know, if we made a mistake, I think that we still have time to withdraw that particular proposal, but I am not completely sure we have made the mistake. So, Micah, do you have clarity?
I don't know if it's clarity, but I want to say that was a WABO proposal, and we have lots of folks that participate in ASCE. I thought we withdrew that comment or withdrew that portion of the comment that included supplement 2. I will go back and verify with Julius Caron. He works for City of Bellevue and is an engineer and participates for us in that. So I just need to go back and verify that. I think that was discussed, Roger, and that was pulled out specifically. And we've been discussing that at Seattle as well. So I can help get that information for you, Roger. We got a lot of folks that participate that way. And I want to say we pulled that already, but if we haven't, I agree with you. I think that's on the people to be pulled. So, but I think we did.
So email it to me. I will take responsibility for pulling the information together and getting it prepared for this group for our next meeting in December, and we'll address it at that point. Okay. Is there any other business? Any other business? All right. Hearing none, I will adjourn our meeting. I appreciate everybody's time and input and knowledge. Talk to you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See y'all.